कोई बात नहीं, तो क्या
Sayyid. Put this on.
Brothers and sisters, we're going to begin in just a few seconds. In the meantime, please help yourself to some chai, some tea. There's some nice cakes, biscuits, and fruit.
Fruit as well, yeah.
There's fruit as well, freshly cut fruit. Please do help yourself. Inshallah, we're going to begin just in a few seconds.
One more party to come. And then we can begin. One more party. If he's not, it's fine. Actually, I'm going to do it before. Yeah, that's fine.
Let's go ahead and adorn this hall with a loud and passionate salawat. He is going to recite. Which surah are you reciting about? Surah Adiyat. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه إذا بؤثر ما في القبور وحصر ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والآخر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
اللهم
صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Recite a few a eulogy, inshallah. So let's welcome him with a loud salawat.
जिसका पढ़े कहते हैं, वफा जिसका पढ़े कलमा उसे सजदे करे सजदा उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। राब दरिया को वो प्यासा प्यास ने जिसकी किया सहराब दरिया को, है जिसकी प्यास भी दरिया उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। जो है शबीर की कुव्वत, अली को नाज है जिस पर, जो है शबीर है जिस पर, जिसे ज़हरा कहे बेटा उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। जिसे ज़हरा कहे बेटा उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। जो पत्थर पर अलम गाड़े उसे कहते हैं सब हैदर, से कहते हैं सब हैदर। अलम गाड़े जो जो था शबीर का खादिम, मगर सब जो था शबीर का खादिम, मगर सब साहिबाने दिल उसे आका उसे मौला उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। वफा जिसका पढ़े कलमा उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। जिसे सजदे करे सजदा उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। मोहम्मद वालिद मोहम्मद चांद करबला के तूने तो देखे होंगे, उतरे थे इस ज़मीं पर अर्शे बरी के तारे। ऐ चांद करबला के, ऐ चांद रात करबला के, ऐ चांद इस ज़मीं पर रखियो हमेशा ठंडक। सोते जो हैं यहाँ पर ज़हरा के हैं तस्नीम सलसबीलो कौसर के हैं ये मालिक, मारे गए जो प्यासे इस नहर के किनारे, जैसे जांबाज और हिब्बा मारे गए यहीं पर अंसार शाहिदी के, ऐ चांद करबला के मारे गए यहीं पर बेदर्दियों सितम से, मुस्लिम के दोनों प्यारे ज़ैनब के दोनों बेटे, ऐ चांद पामाल हो रही थी कासिम की लाश रन में, अब्बास और सरवर चुनते थे उनके टुकड़े, ऐ चांद बाजू कटे यहीं पर अब्बास बाफा के, इज़्ने वग़ा न पाया पानी भिला न पाए, ऐ चांद करबला के इस सरज़मी पे गुजरा सरवर पे ये भी सदमा, सीने पे खाई बरछी हम शक्ल मुस्तफा ने, ऐ चांद करबला के पानी पिलाने लाए एक मैलका को सरवर, किया ज़िब हुरमला ने तीरे सितम लगा के, गर्दन छिदी पिसर की बाजू छिदा पिदर का, दोनों तड़प तड़प के प्यासे जहां से गुजरे, ऐ चांद करबला के इस बन में एक बच्ची बाबा को ढूंढती थी, बिखरे हुए पड़े थे जब सर बुरी तलाशे, फिर ये भी तूने देखा वो गम रसीदा बच्ची सीने पे सो रही थी बेसर पिदर से लिपटे, ऐ चांद करबला के बाजू बंधे यहीं पर पहले पहल हरम के, इस सरजमीन से निकले सज्जाद सर झुकाए, पहुंचा है करबला में नाचीज से जाफर, ऐ काश फिर मुकद्दर हमको ये दिन दिखाए, ऐ चांद
Could I please request each and every one in a very as our tiny Arshid who's going to us. Let's welcome her with a loud salawat.
बारी दीगर बाबा से बुलंद सलावत।
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Arshid Batul Hassan, and today I'm going to talk about our beloved Bibi Zaynab al-Islam, peace be upon her. Bibi Zaynab al-Islam was a remarkable woman who showed incredible strength and courage during one of the most difficult times in Islamic history. Bibi Zaynab al-Islam was the daughter of Imam Ali al-Islam and Bibi Fatima al-Islam. From a young age, she learned about faith, patience, and wisdom from her family. She grew up to be a very knowledgeable and strong. She saw her beloved brother, Zaynab al-Islam, and then took care of the surviving family members and protected them. Bibi Zaynab al-Islam spoke bravely in the courts of Yazid and Ibn Zayyad, known as Yazid and his followers.
बेशुमार
Her powerful words revealed the truth and showed her unshakable faith. She said to Yazid, "Though you have made us prisoners, but you will never erase our memory or kill our revelation." Her speeches always remind us to speak the truth and stand against injustice. Bibi Zaynab al-Salam teaches us many important lessons. She shows us how to be patient and strong during tough times. She teaches us to care and support each other, just as she did for her family. By following her example, we can become better Muslims and stronger in our faith. As we remember Bibi Zaynab al-Salam today, let us pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength.
Thank you so much. That was very nicely done. I was made aware just before that she also wasn't feeling too great either, so you couldn't tell, mashallah, she's done an amazing job. And now I was, of course, as I request our keynote speaker to come and start his speech, slight addition of the agenda today, and that is, there's a request for a Q&A. So once our khatib, you may have queries about the topic, or this will be, of course, before the Masaib section of the Majlis, and then we'll finish off with and Salah, inshallah. So let's welcome our Khatib, Sayyid Heydar Jamaludeen, to the member with a loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Nare Takbir,
Allahu Akbar,
Nare Takbir,
Allahu Akbar,
Nare Risalat,
Ya Rasulullah,
Nare Risalat,
Ya Rasulullah,
Nare Heydari,
Ya Ali,
Nare Heydari,
Ya Ali.
आवाज बुलंद सलावत
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين نحمده ونستعينه ونستجيره ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وسمي في الأرضين بأبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل المظلومين المنتجبين المظلومين المستشهدين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من حين عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to be in an environment like this, at a time like this, for us to be around with the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. I'm surprised actually that there's so many people here. You know, it's a surprise seeing the England's playing right now. You know, it's the final. Gosh. Surprised to see Shahab by here. But alhamdulillah, it shows that the love of Abu Abdullah Hussein trumps everything else. And it comes first. And that is a very beautiful thing amongst all of us, that we put Abu Abdullah Hussein first, and we make sure that he is a priority in our lives. Over the last few nights, we've been mentioning taqwa and iman. One of the parts of taqwa, one of the factors of taqwa is trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the factors of iman, sorry brothers and sisters. One of the factors of iman is tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And understanding that you do your best and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does the rest. So from you the best, from Allah the rest. You do your duty, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you just say to him, you know what, fine, it's all on you after this. You know, because there's nothing more I can do physically. It says in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم in Surah Al-Ibrahim, He says, وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَقَدْ هَدَانَا سُبُلَنَا وَلَنَصْبِرَنَّ عَلَى مَا آذَيْتُمُونَا وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. And why should we not put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeing that He has guided us in our way? We will put up patiently with whatever torment you may inflict upon us, and in Allah let all the trusting people put their trust. As I mentioned on multiple times over the last few nights, that we see the people of Gaza and we see that their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something immense. They know that they have nobody but Him. So they're constantly asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. They're constantly asking Him, and they're saying that He's enough for us, so they're not worried when they go forth. Patiently with whatever torment you may inflict upon us. I believe we also mentioned that the word sabr has had a very unfortunate mistranslation, and we tend to translate it as patience. The Holy Quran, when it says sabr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not talking about patience, He's talking about steadfastness. And this steadfastness is what tawakkul is that I will be patient in the face of anything. So first of all we have tawakkul, that you do everything and then you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do the rest. But alongside tawakkul, you must be steadfast in your path. You must have patience on that path that you've set out on, in the meaning that now that I've done everything I can, I will leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and anything that happens to me, I'll be patient because I have that tawakkul in Him and I know He's going to help me. So, this is the meaning of tawakkul, brothers and sisters. We also mentioned that in order to reach those lofty stages that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam wants us to be in, we said that we must be true Shi'as. We must be people who are the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. We mustn't be, as Imam Hussein alayhi salam says on the day of Ashura, we mustn't be people of Dhillah, we must be people of Izzah. So the Shia is a person who is dignified. He does not succumb to anything, both physical, spiritual, any kind of opponent, any kind of opposition. He does not succumb. He stands firm until he attains victory in one of two paths, which is victory or shahada, victory or martyrdom. As we mentioned, it says it in the Holy Quran as well. One of two victories, it says in the Holy Quran. So there's a hadith from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, this also it also relates to one of the hadith that we mentioned, and one of the parts that we mentioned about who should we listen to, brothers and sisters. A few nights ago we mentioned that who should I listen to when I'm sitting a bit? What should my criteria be? And we mentioned a lot about money. We mentioned this money. Yes, we should be, providing for that scholar because he's giving his time for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But does it mean that he goes and he requests that money? No, this is against dignity. This is not izzah. You're doing something that is your duty. You're doing the zakat of ilm. It says, one of the hadith of the Prophet is, zakat al-ilm nashruhu. It's wajib for you to distribute the ilm. So, why are you going ahead and then taking money for something that's wajib? Do we not say that it's haram to take money for doing something wajib? It's haram for you to take money for doing something wajib. You can't pay somebody to go and pray. Daily 5 times pray. You can't pay somebody to go and fast during the month of Ramadan. It doesn't work like that. If it's a gift, of course, that's a different thing. But you can't pay somebody to do that thing. So if that person is going out and seeking payment for this act, which is a wajib act, which is him spreading his knowledge, brothers and sisters, this is not the person who is righteous, as Nabi Isa alayhi salam says. He says this person is not a well-wisher for you. You should accuse him. Accuse him and know that he is not a well-wisher. He doesn't want that. He doesn't have your best interest in mind. He just wants the pay packet and get out of there. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Shi'atuna thalathata asnaf. Our Shia are of 3 kinds. He says, Sinfun ya'kuluna nas bina. This is a very scary way that Imam says. He says, one type exploits us in order to consume the wealth of the people. They use us in order to get that money from the people. And the second part is, وَصِنْفٌ كَالزُّجَاجٍ يَتَهَشَّى. كَالزُّجَاجِ يَتَهَشَّى. He says another type is like glass that shatters. Yani their faith is like glass that shatters. When they are faced with even the smallest of doubts, they fall back and they're like, oh wait a second, I'm done here. My brothers have told me that it's very important for us to learn our religion. For us to become like the third group. What does Imam Sadiq alayhi salam say? He says, وَصِنْفٌ كَالذَّهَبِ الْأَحْمَرِ كُلَّمَا أَدْخَلَ النَّارِ ازْدَادَ جَوْدًا. He says, the third tribulations, brothers and sisters, you pass through each and every trial. The more trials you pass through, the more valuable you become to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more valuable you become to Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. The more valuable you become to Hujjat ibn Hasan al-Mahdi ajatullah ta'ala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And one of the things that unfortunately we see in our communities as well is the judgment, is sort of the judgment of the people, and the way they are so easy to spurn a person and just, throw them aside. A very good scholar I was listening to a few nights ago, he mentioned that if we were to be the invigilators of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's camp, the inspectors of Imam Hussein's camp, we would have probably rejected 75% of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We probably would have said, you know what, you're not fit to be in the camp of Imam Hussein, you can go, get out of here. Do you think a Sunni or a person who is a vehement opponent of Imam Ali alayhi salam, somebody who fought against Imam Ali alayhi salam, do you think he's fit for the camp of Imam Hussein? Somebody who's a Christian, do you think he's fit for the camp of Imam Hussein? Somebody who stopped the family of Abu Abdullah in the plains of Karbala, do you think he's fit for the camp of Imam Hussein? Was Zuhair ibn Qayn fought against Imam Ali alayhi salam. You have Wahab Nasrani, who they say was a Christian in Karbala. The thing is, brothers and sisters, we're very quick to judge. We're very quick to pass judgment on people. As that scholar said, he said, that we should hate the sin and not the sinner, brothers and sisters. Because the sin is inherently bad. But the sinner is not inherently bad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him with an innate nature that is pure. So we have to remember, brothers and sisters, that everyone can be guided. And we see this in the life of Abu Abdullah, that every single chance he could have, every single step of his way in Karbala, you see he's emanating that mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله غافر الذنوب جميعا يغفر الذنوب جميعا. He forgives all sins. So we don't despair, brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very merciful. But He's merciful to an extent, brothers and sisters. We don't take it both ways too far. He's merciful to an extent, but when you've had that ultimatum, when there is no more excuses left, brothers and sisters, we have to be worried about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath. When you learn about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you, or when you are able to learn about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you, when you are able to do so, say we're doing any of these things. If we're doing any of these things and there is a chance for us to learn how to do it properly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to give you an excuse on the day of judgment. He's not going to say, oh, you know what, you're fine, like I'll give you a pass. Allah's not like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, very merciful, but He does not excuse your ignorance in a way that it is possible for you to remove the ignorance that you chose not to. There is a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Out to the desert. So he says, An-nasu thalatha, people are of three kinds. The first one, فَعَالِمٌ رَبَّانِي. May Allah make us of these people. A divine scholar. A scholar who, when you look at him, he reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah make us of these people. And then he says, وَمُتَعَلِّمٌ عَلَى سَبِيلِ النَّجَاةِ. A seeker of knowledge on the path of salvation. Which again is something that is commended in Islam. The first two are commended, brothers and sisters. The first is that you are a spiritual scholar, that the people are reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they look at you. The second is that you are a seeker of knowledge. If you read Al-Kafi, Kitab Al-Kafi, the Kitab Al-Sharif, the very, very holy book in Shia Islam, one of our four main books. The first chapter of the book is all about ilmi wal jahl, what it means to have knowledge, what it means to be ignorant. I would recommend everyone, inshallah, to take a look at the hadiths that mention the value of somebody who goes to seek knowledge in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a very, very profound, it's a very, very deep mission. Brothers and sisters, we do not want to be whatsoever. He says, وَهَمَجٌ رَعَاءٌ أَتْبَاعُ كُلِّ نَاعِقٍ يَمِيلُونَ مَعَ كُلِّ رِيحٍ لَمْ يَسْتَضِيئُوا بِنُورِ الْعِلْمِ وَلَمْ يَلْجَأُوا إِلَى رُكْنٍ وَثِيقٍ. He says, the third are the ignorant masses. They follow every croaking sound. Every sound, every person says a different thing, we'll go and we'll listen to them. Not differentiating between who is the righteous one speaking and who is the unrighteous one speaking. It says they sway with every wind. Remember how we mentioned about basira and how important it is to have insight. That when the news comes to you, you quickly share it on Instagram, You put it on your stories. You see on somebody else's story, you share it on your story, then, what do they say that? The truth, by the time the truth comes out, the lies are already halfway around the world. Sorry, by the time the truth has tied its laces, the lies have already spread halfway around the world. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying, don't be of those people. He says, they are neither enlightened by the light of knowledge, nor have they taken refuge in a firm support. May Allah protect us from such a fate, inshallah, with the loudness of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We have to understand, brothers and sisters, that I can understand, to be honest. Personally, as a youth growing up in this environment, in the environment of a non-Muslim society, in the environment of a society that, to be honest, is against everything that we stand for as Muslims. We can all agree with that. Is that when we are going out into society, when we are going and interacting with people who are of that society, we don't become like that. We don't become like them. We don't assimilate to an extent that we lose our identity as a Muslim. We want to keep that Muslim identity as the utmost identity of ourselves. It mustn't be that, you know how they say that, like, Muhammad always changes his name to Mo, right? It shouldn't be like that, brothers and sisters. Be proud of your religion. Be proud of your heritage. Be proud of who you are. Your name is Sayyid. Don't just change your name to Sid, you know what I mean? Be proud of that religion. Be proud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proud of you. He says, He has chosen you for this path. He's chosen you as a Muslim. So don't feel like you are something inferior. Unfortunately, we see this in our communities a lot. We see an inferiority complex to the white man. You know? Mustn't be like this, brothers and sisters. Al-Islamu ya'la wa la yu'la alayh. Islam dominates, and it is never dominated. This subhanahu wa ta'ala abandon you, brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there for you. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ability to truly express our Muslim identity, to truly express who we are, for those who are Sayyid, to express how we are the proud sons of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to manifest this in the best way possible with the allowance of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We spoke yesterday, brothers and sisters, about lowering the gaze and not looking at that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram upon us. And we mentioned that this is perhaps we didn't mention it yesterday, I'm not sure. We mentioned, but now I will mention that, if I did not mention it yesterday, that this is a two-way obligation, brothers and sisters. We have a lot of people who, they say, why would I need to observe this hijab that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned? And trust me, sisters, this is not going to be one of those speeches where we are completely targeting the sisters, I promise you. Because we see a lot of that. But, brothers and sisters, it's very raise their eyes and look at that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden upon them. But on the other hand, brothers and sisters, there is a hijab that is compulsory on both men and women. Of course, as we mentioned, lowering the gaze, brothers and sisters, which means, okay, say I'm going to look at somebody, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, you look once and then you look away. You look once and then you raise your head up to the sky, or you raise your head down. When we say looking, we mean looking in that way. As far as, like, if you I don't want to go too far into it. Let's leave it at that, inshallah. Looking at somebody in that kind of manner, that is the haram kind of manner, brothers and sisters. As Imam Khomeini, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, he says if women knew how men would look at them, they would cover themselves in a coat of iron. They would cover themselves in a way that the men would not be able to look at them whatsoever. These are the words of Imam Khomeini. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. Now, I don't want to go into too much of talking about, this is the ruling of this and this is the ruling of that. I don't want to talk about ahkam. We're not here to talk about ahkam. But just as a quick refresher, let's discuss what the wajib hijab is. Right? The wajib hijab is that we cover, or the sisters would cover their entire body so that it is hidden from the male gaze, except their face, which is just the circle of their face, and their hands. Anything else, brothers and sisters, must be covered, including up to your wrists, including socks. Everything of this is hijab, brothers and sisters. All of this is hijab. The clothes mustn't be too tight, because it will show the shape of the body. And this is against modesty and iffa and haya, which is one of the main things in Islam. We have to be careful, brothers and sisters, inshallah. Because not only is it a duty on our sisters, it's also a duty on our brothers to ensure that our sisters know. Of course, not just any random sister on the street. I'm talking about your family, of course. It says in the Holy Quran, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara." Protect yourself and your family from the hellfire. So inshallah, it's very, very important, brothers and sisters, because nowadays we have this notion that hijab is just, like the headscarf. It's the entire body. You cover the entire body in loose-fitting clothes, brothers and sisters, except for the face and your hands. That's all. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
नारे तकबीर,
الله أكبر.
नारे तकबीर,
الله أكبر.
नारे
خاتم الانبیاء با آواز بلند صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد و آل محمد.
As we mentioned over the few nights, that these obligations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given us are something that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gave his life for. He let his Zaynab go into captivity for this sake, to ensure that these rules would remain. So both brothers and sisters, if we are not to observe these rules, it's as though we are neglecting about Billah. It's as if you're coming to his majalis, but then after the majalis, when you go home, it's as if, okay, you know what, I'm going to keep you on the shelf until next Muharram. Na'udhu billah. So we have to be careful. It might seem that I'm going after the sisters a lot now. Trust me, we're going to get to the men, inshallah, as well. We also see that, for example, there are many sisters who go and they, they put their faces on social media and so on and so forth. Our ulama have also discouraged this. There's also about reciting in front of men, brothers and sisters. It's a very important topic. That Imam, like Ayatollah Khamenei and Ayatollah Sistani and many of the Maraj, they say that if a woman is to recite or sing in front of a man, and there is a danger that this might cause fisad or corruption, then it is haram for the sister to do so. So we have to be very careful, brothers and sisters, in these topics, that we make sure we observe these societal taqwa as much as possible. Because remember what we said yesterday, taqwa is not just individual, it is social. It means that, okay, I'm a muttaqi myself, but I make sure as well that I'm doing my part to ensure that I'm not destroying society myself. Or I'm helping other people observe and protect that society that I'm living in. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Now, when it comes to men, brothers and sisters, the most and the highest obligation of the men is to lower their gaze. That's the main thing for brothers. Of course, it is also for sisters, but that is at a lower level. That the duty of our sisters in this case of corruption and trying to save ourselves from this corruption is that they observe the hijab in the correct manner. But if we are to go over to the men, the main thing for them is to lower their gaze. We have so many different hadith, Lower your gaze so that you can see wonders, as Rasulullah says. Or for example, we have that the gaze is one of the poisonous arrows of shaitan. And if you stay away from it, then Allah will fill your heart with the sweetness of His faith. It's one of those key deeds, brothers and sisters, that if you perform it, it could lead you to hell. And if you stay away from it, it could lead you to be greater than the angels. Because remember, brothers, I don't know if many of you know, I don't think I've discussed this already either, that a man can be greater than an angel or worse than shaitan. Because the angels do not have free will, brothers and sisters. They don't have that free will that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted upon us. We have the free will to make choices. The angels are predestined. They are stuck at that high level that they have. We see in the Holy Quran, in I can't remember which surah, it says in Surah Al-Najm, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi went up in Mi'raj, he went to a stage where Jibreel tells him, I can't go any further, but you can. And they say that he was so close in proximity to the Dhat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it says, قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ أَوْ أَدْنَى. So we have the ability to be greater than an angel. Or we also have the ability to be worse than shaitan. Inshallah, may Allah protect us from that. So as I was mentioning, let's go back to the topic. Brothers, we must lower our gaze. Very important. But also important is that we أن يكشف ثيابه ويجلس بين قوم. It's not deserving, it's not right for a man to show his legs or show his thighs, his upper leg, while amongst the people. And they brought him shorts, and he said, these are the clothes of somebody who's dalil. And a Shia is not dalil. Or for example, there's another hadith where it says, عليكم بالصفيق من الثياب فإنه من رق ثوبه رق دينه. Adhere to thick clothing. Try to wear clothing that isn't see-through. Brothers. For whoever wears thin clothing, their religion grows thin. There are reasons why the Ahlul Bayt say these things, brothers and sisters. They're not just saying it because they want to. They're not just saying it because they fancy to say so. The thing is, brothers and sisters, that who knows that in a passing glance you could ruin a family. In a passing glance, it's human attraction is something very, very strange, brothers and sisters. Is that in an instant a man could feel, suddenly he could look at somebody else and think that she's very, very beautiful. Na'udhu. Maybe even a lady could do so. The whole essence of hijab and lowering the gaze is to protect that family institute in Islam, which inshallah we will discuss more tomorrow, to protect it in a way that it does not get any harm whatsoever, so that you are lowering your gaze, and at the same time you're covering yourself so that if somebody else has a lapse in their religion, they do not be affected when they raise that gaze. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
I forgot to mention one more thing about the hijab, is that also includes makeup as well. So inshallah we'll move on now though. Brothers and sisters, as we both know, as brothers and sisters, as we all know, is that throughout history our sisters have been oppressed. Our sisters being women as a whole. And it's something that is, back in the day, it was physical. They were considered lesser beings, they were considered as if their brains were smaller, and so on and so forth. But eventually, with the coming of the 20th and the 21st century, they realized slowly, they, as we say, they realized that they could no longer subjugate women in a physical manner. So they turned the tables, brothers and sisters, and they changed it into a psychological subjugation. A subjugation that is not, telling you to, stay in the kitchen, otherwise I'm going to beat you, the 50s, how it was back in the 50s, or that you are a slave to the man and you don't have any rights, you can't inherit money, you can't do any of this as it was before Islam. So now they realize that the way we can subjugate the women, enslave the women, rather than doing it in a way that's overt, let's do it in a way that's covert. Let's do it in a way that, perhaps they don't realize what they're doing. Let's give them these standards of beauty. Let's give them these subjective, as I mentioned before several times, brothers and sisters, these are subjective things. They gave them these subjective standards to relate to, so that I can be considered beautiful, I can be considered a worthy member of society. For example, one of the doubts that they give about their hijab is that it says in the Holy Quran, it says, La ikraha fi din, right? It means there's no compulsion in religion. That means that I'm not forced to do anything in Islam, isn't it? Brothers and sisters, this is an oppression done to the Quran, because the Quran, when it says La ikraha fi din, is talking about acceptance of Islam. there is no ikrah, there is no compulsion in accepting Islam. You are free to accept Islam, and accepting Islam under the threat or under duress is actually not accepted. You're not allowed to accept Islam if you are forced to. Islam must be something that is heartfelt, that you do because you want to. Now, this surely does not apply to that. It does not apply to doing things within Islam, because once you've entered the folds of Islam, Islam has its own rules and regulations, naturally, like every institute does. Unfortunately, the media and the society we have, the society we live in, has a very big part to play in this. Well, on the TV we see, for example, one of the shuyukh mentioned Cars, as I remember a little bit earlier. I was watching one of his speeches and he talked about, the movie Cars, the cartoon. I don't know if many of you have watched it, when he's driving and he's with the other female car, for example. And suddenly he gets lost in her beauty, and then all of a sudden he loses the race. This tells a woman that the thing that can get her furthest in her life is not her intellect, is not her, her own efforts, but it's her beauty. It's not what we should be introducing our children to, brothers and sisters. We have to be very careful with the content that we are putting inside our children, that we are putting into our children's minds. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
The main thing, brothers and sisters, is that it comes from the home. This mainly comes from the home. With my daughter, she comes to me, she says, of course, as I mentioned, I don't have kids yet. When I'm with my daughter, and she comes to me, I never have time for her. I never give her the attention she needs. So when you don't give your daughter the attention she needs, she's going to look for the attention from somewhere else, brothers and sisters. She needs that attention. For example, they say that the first woman a man loves, the other way around, the first man a woman falls in love with is her father. Many times they say that, the girl is much closer to the father and the son is much closer to the mother. It's how the children learn the opposite of what they are. As I'm going to mention tomorrow, inshallah, about the difference in Islam, the difference in man and woman. We see that, for example, the man is a manifestation more of the jalali aspects of Islam, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while the woman is more the manifestation of the jamali aspects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we see mercy, we see beauty in the woman, we see kindness, we see all of those soft aspects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the woman. But when we look at men, we see all of the characteristics of, strength. We see of course women are strong as well, don't crucify me on that one, don't cancel me, inshallah. We see strength, we see the ghayra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very important word, this, brothers and sisters, ghayra. We have this sort of concept nowadays of, the trophy wife. A man must be caring over his wife to make sure that she does not get hurt in society. She does not get infiltrated by this society that we are in currently, brothers and sisters. He has that ghayra over her to make sure that she is fine. She is safe. As we see in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Al-Ajal qawwamun ala nisa." The men are the managers of the women. They are the ones who take care of them. And I'm getting really, really close into our discussion for tomorrow, and I'm getting on the border, so inshallah we'll discuss that tomorrow. I'll leave it as a cliffhanger. But it's true, brothers and sisters, that as fathers, if we are to have daughters, it's a very, very big responsibility. Because those daughters are going to be the mothers of society in the future. Those daughters that we have are going to be the wives of the future men of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those daughters that we have are the ones who are going to bear the children who will bring forth the revolution of Imam al-Zaman Ajalullah ta'ala Farajan Sharif.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
For example, there's a hadith that says, "Man dakhala as-suq fashtara tuhfatan fahamalaha ila 'iyalihi كَانَ كَحَامِلِ صَدَقَةٍ إِلَىٰ قَوْمٍ مَحَاوِيجٍ. The person who enters a marketplace and buys a gift, who enters a shop, he goes to the shop, and he buys a gift and he takes it to his family, it's as if he's taking sadaqah to the needy. It's a very profound hadith. How important is sadaqah in Islam? It's saying that if you are to take a gift, just a gift to your children or to your family, it's like you're giving sadaqah. As they say, sadaqah should begin within the home. And then look at what the infallible says. He says, وَلْيَبْدَأْ بِالْإِنَاثِ قَبْلَ الذُّكُورِ. He says he should start with the girls before the boys. He should give the gifts to أَنْثَى فَكَأَنَّمَا عَتَّ. He's saying that you have done such a great thing that you freed a slave from the family of Rasulullah himself. Of course, then he goes down and he mentions how important it is to make your sons happy. So the boys said, don't feel upset. He says, وَمَنْ أَقَرَّ بِعَيْنِ إِبْنٍ فَكَأَنَّمَا بَكَى مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ أَدْخَلَهُ جَنَّاتِ النَّعِيمِ. He says, whoever brightens his son's eye, which means whoever makes his son happy, it's as if he has cried from the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the person who sheds tears from the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will put him in the highest of heavens. So it's very important, brothers and sisters, to establish that loving and caring atmosphere in your homes, where you bring gifts for your children, you bring, you don't have to bring gifts, you don't even have to bring gifts, just make them happy. Spend time with them, show them attention, brothers and sisters, and inshallah, we can be proud on the Day of Judgment when Rasulullah, as he says that I will take pride in you. Have children because I will take pride in you on the Day of Judgment. That you have taken this step to increase the population of my ummah. So inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to implement this in our lives by the loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Another issue, brothers and sisters, is women's rights in Islam, which also will go into more press in Islam and all this nonsense. Because if they just did a little bit of investigation into Islam, what it truly means to be a woman in Islam, they would understand that a woman is freer in Islam than in any other religion. Alhamdulillah. I say this to my friends a lot. I say if Islam was followed to the T, if Islam was followed how it was supposed to be followed, this world would be a utopia. If you look into the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look into the rules of Allah, if you look into the doctrine of the Ahlul Bayt, you'll see that it's nothing but beauty. Every single rule that you think, that might seem a bit fishy, if you just read into it a little bit and you think about it, don't think about it with this lens they've put over your eyes, brothers and sisters, Think about it unbiased. Think about it as a sort of, with a neutrality. Don't be like, don't have that mask over your eyes. Whenever you look at it, always look at it neutrally. And think about it with your innate nature, with your nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instilled within you. Because we all have that divine nature within us. Especially us as Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instilled that within us. So when we see some rulings that seem a bit strange, ask yourself, does it seem strange because I am, looking at it from a Western lens? Or does it seem strange because I'm actually evaluating it according to the Quran? If you're evaluating it according to the Quran, then brothers and sisters, I'll tell you to, ask a scholar definitely. Because no rule in Islam should go against the Quran. There's a hadith that says, فَضْرِبُوهُ عَلَى الْجِدَارِ. If you see that it conflicts with the Quran, smack it on the wall. Get rid of it. It's a saying in Arabic. But if you see that, perhaps it doesn't concur with your intellect, that you have a lens over, then be careful, brothers and sisters, and try to remove that lens from your eyes before viewing the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a saying that says, "Man hakama bihi al-aql, hakama bihi al-shar, wa man hakama bihi al-shar, hakama bihi al-aql." Yeah. It says, whatever the shar of Allah dictates, whatever the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dictate, the aql also dictates, the intellect dictates. And whatever the intellect dictates, the rules of Allah dictate. So inshallah, we should also take a look into that as well. The one thing I wanted to mention was this whole discussion of equality, brothers and sisters, of women and men being equal. Equality means people being on the same level, regardless of their, their gender, their race, or anything like that, or any of their circumstances, essentially. Equality means that they are one part in accordance to them as their beings. There's the saying that men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? Inshallah, we'll discuss this more tomorrow, where we discuss the differences, the inherent differences in women and men that makes it more palpable to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made certain differences in the rulings of men and women. Inshallah, as brother mentioned, we'll open up for questions now. Whoever has any questions, inshallah, please go forward, please raise your hand or so on. The sisters can also ask as well. Inshallah, there's a microphone, so Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's half time as well, so I know you're not watching the match, brothers. It's goalless as well. There's no goals. There's no goals yet.
Obviously, went over. Sorry, this is not released anyway.
Ladies first. Ladies first, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I have a question. When we join Jamaat, if we join in the middle, are we supposed to start from that point or from the beginning, our own namaz?
It's a good question. It's an important question. So, if you are to join your salah, if the imam's in his first rak'ah, you join in the first rak'ah. If the imam's in his second rak'ah, you are still in your first. If he's in the second rak'ah, you're still in your first rak'ah. So, from wherever you join the jama'ah, you will always be in your first rak'ah. So even if you join when he's in his fourth rak'ah, you will be starting your first rak'ah and you can continue with him. You can only join the jama'ah when the imam is in the qiyam or if he's in ruku'. You cannot join after ruku'. There's also for other ahkam as well regarding the jama'ah as well, that for example, you rise with him. Then when you're in your second rak'ah and the imam is in his third, you perform tashahhud while he gets up after his second sajda. Inshallah, it's beneficial.
I've got a question. So the question is, can a husband and a wife do jama'ah together?
Alhamdulillah, one of the blessings of Islam is jama'ah, which is where at least two people can pray together. So yes, a husband and a wife can perform jama'ah just on their own, but it's important that the woman stands behind the man's legs. Yani, go ahead of him. Yeah.
They don't have to be husband and wife. Or they have to be husband.
Well, there is a hadith that says that when a man and a woman are alone in a room, the third person is shaitan. So I don't know what they're doing on their own in the first place, but...
Excuse me, can we please finish the majlis first with Masai? We can have all the questions, we can be here all night. So please carry on with the majlis.
Inshallah, brothers and sisters, today we will be discussing a young man on the plains of Karbala. A man who was more man than any of us that we could say, to be honest. Although at the tender age of only 16 years old, he showed what it meant to truly be a follower of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam and a follower of the doctrine of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Qasim ibn al-Hasan alayhi salam, he was brought up in the house of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. He was only 5 years old, according to some narrations, depending, some say 13, some say 16 when he was made shaheed. He was only about 3 to 6 years old when he entered the house of Imam al-Husayn after his holy father, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, was poisoned by his wife. And he vomited his liver into a tub, brothers and sisters. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they suffered a lot. And for what reason? The reason was that they wanted to bring people towards salvation. It's as if what was happening was the hand that was feeding them was biting them. The hand that was feeding them was being bitten. The hand that was feeding the people was being bitten, brothers and sisters. They just wanted to enact that mercy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had onto the earth. And this is why we see that throughout everything that the Ai-Imma went through, they were always striving to help the people and to bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Qasim, he spent, let's say 10 years. He spent 10 years with Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, with Sayyid Zaynab alayhi salam, with all of these great individuals. He spent all that time with them. And we see that upbringing he receives from them is something that brings him closer and closer and closer to that path, and that ability to know when his time is up and know when he must stand and know when he must sit. He understood what it meant to sit, and he understood what it meant to stand in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything we do, brothers and sisters, is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says in the Quran, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. My salah, my rituals, my life and my death are all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He understood this and he implemented it in his life at an age that many of you youngsters and you youngsters can relate to. Even myself. To an extent where we see that he is willing to sacrifice his life, and many of us think, I've got a long life ahead of us. I'm just going to, perhaps I'll just sit down in the tents and I won't go forward. Many of us would think this, I've got my whole life ahead of me. Let me just sit inside the tents. But Qasim here, he understands what it means to be a true believer. He understands what it means to call Husayn alayhi salam Imam. And then we see that throughout the events of Karbala, and throughout the events of when Imam Hussain is moving from Medina to Mecca, and then from Mecca to the next place, to Mecca to Kufa, and eventually Karbala, he's with Imam al-Husayn. He's seeing all of these things. He's seeing everything. He's seeing Muslim ibn Aqil. They mentioned that he's been made shaheed. He's there when that happens. He's there when the ambassador comes, when the messenger comes to Imam al-Husayn and tells him that all of his emissaries have been made shaheed in all of the cities he sent. He's there when Hurr comes and he tells Imam al-Husayn to stop. He's there and he witnesses the enemy piling up one after the other, after the other, after the other, until almost 30,000 people are piled up against Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. But do we ever see any sort of tremble in him? Do we see any sort of weakness within Qasim? No. Because he understood his duty, he learnt what his duty was in this situation. On the night of Ashura, he asked Imam Hussein, am I going to be martyred? And he sees that his place is in heaven. They say that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, on the night of Ashura, he showed all of the companions and all of the shuhada their place in heaven and where they would be. So Qasim knew. Qasim knew what his fate was. And there was you could say that at that point he was annihilated within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't see himself as himself anymore. He saw himself as the sacrifice needed to bring that reform into society. Sallallahu alayka ya وهذا الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة وخزان العين. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, O my beloved Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. Angels descended upon you day and day out, seeking permission before entering upon you. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. It was in your homes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with guidance and revelation. Sallallahu alayka ya Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Maghlum. أيها الشهيد بأرض كربلاء عطشانا. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved Imam al-Hussein. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my oppressed Imam, the Imam who was slaughtered by the shores of the Euphrates, while your lips were dry from thirst. Sallallahu alayhi, sallallahu alayhi, sallallahu alayhi. Brothers and sisters, the day of Ashura has come. Imam al-Hussein has only just sent his beloved nephew on to the battle. He's brave, he fights, and he's martyred. Abu Abdullah, his face grows brighter with every person who's martyred. But Ya Abu Abdullah, how can you send this next one to the battlefield? A young man whose armor doesn't fit him. His sword is dragging on the ground. His sandals ripped from Tiban. He comes to you. You look at him, he reminds you of your brother. When you look at him, you remember Hassan ibn Ali. Ya Imam al-Hassan, how oppressed you were. How oppressed you are. When I go to your shrine, I don't see a dome. I don't see minarets. I don't see a door open to your zawar. لعن الله قوما ظلموك. May Allah curse your people that oppressed you. Sallallahu alayhi ya Qasim ibn al-Hasan. He comes to Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. He says, please can I have permission to fight? Imam al-Husayn looks at him, he says, how can I let you fight? You are a reminder of Hassan. He keeps asking, Eventually, Abu Abdullah hugs this young man. The Rawi, the narrator, he says that they cried so much that they almost fainted on the battlefield. How painful this must have been for you, Ya Abu Abdullah. The trust that your brother gave to you on his deathbed. You are now sacrificing him. You are now sending him to his death. Eventually, Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, he says, Qasim, you can go. The Rabi, he says that I saw a youth on a horse come out towards us. His face was shining like the moon. His sandals were red. He goes towards the enemy, he fights bravely. One of the Mal'oon, he turns to the narrator and he says, by Allah, I will make his mother mourn over him. The narrator says, Wailakum, what's wrong with you? There's enough people to do this. Ya Abu Abdullah, how alone you are. Only about 70 men against 30,000. This Mal'oon insists, he says, no, I will kill him. He rushes towards Qasim ibn al-Hasan. He raises his sword. He brings down the sword upon the forehead of Qasim. Qasim falls to the ground and he calls out, Ya Amma, oh my uncle, help me. At that moment, the Maqtal says, فَجَلَّ عَلَيْهِ عَمُّهُ كَالصَّارِ. His uncle, Imam al-Husayn, he cannot believe what he's hearing. Why, Qasim, the reminder of my brother, the trust of my brother. He rushes to the battlefield like an eagle. وهو يفحص برجله التراب. When he reaches Qasim, Qasim is writhing in pain. He's kicking the dust with his feet. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says, بُعْدًا لِقَوْمٍ قَتَلُوا. May Allah be far from the people who killed you. He says, عز والله على عمك أن تدعو فلا يجيب. It is difficult by Allah for your uncle, for you to call your uncle and he cannot help you. Oh, يجيبك وأنت قتيل جديد. Or you call him and he responds to you, but there is nothing he can do for you. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Look at how lonely Aba Abdullah is. Look at what he says. والله يوم كثر واتره وقل ناصره. He says, this is a day by Allah where my enemies are many. My companions are few, my helpers are few. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, how oppressed you are. Perhaps at this moment, Aba Abdullah remembers the words of his brother as he was dying, as he was leaving this world. Imam al-Hasan, he's vomiting into the tub. He turns to Imam al-Hussein and he sees that he's crying. He asks him, why are you crying, oh brother? Imam al-Hussein, he says, look at your state, how can I not cry upon you? He turns to Abu Abdullah and he says, La yawmka yawmika ya Abu Abdullah. This may be bad, ya Abu Abdullah. This may be a difficult scene for you to bear, but there is no day like yours, ya Abu Abdullah. والشمر جالس على صدرك مولغ سيفه على نحرك. And Shimr was sitting on your chest, quenching the thirst of his sword with your blood. Sallallahu alayhi ya Aba Abdullah, sallallahu alayhi, sallallahu alayhi. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
जबरदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही तू ना आया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही तू ना आया सब बोले जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा दे नाया बाजी हमको पानी ना मिले तेरी खुशबू तो रहे तेरे बाजू ना कटे चाहे मशकी साच दे ये मगर हो ना सका तेरे बाजू है जुदा मुझ पे है कृष्णा नबी सुनाया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा लेती रही सुनाया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा लेती रही सुनाया बाजी है बरहना मेरा सर क्या नहीं तुझको खबर ए अलमदार वफा इस बहन को खुदा तुझसे ढारती बड़ी देती रही सुनाया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही सुनाया बाजी हमको पानी ना मिले तेरी खुशबू तो रहे तेरे बाजू ना कटे चाहे मशकी साच दे ये मगर हो कृष्णा नबी सुनाया सब बोले जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही सुनाया बाजी देती रही लुट गए अहले हरा पुरसा आ गए बारी सुनाया बाजी रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा सुनाया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही सुनाया बाजी आ गई शाम अला लुट गए अहले हरा रेत पर जलती हुई हो गया ठंडाला फुर्सत देने के लिए मुझसे मिलने के लिए आ गए बाबाली सुनाया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही सुनाया बाजी जब रिदा सर से छिनी मैं सदा देती रही सुनाया बाजी कितनी बेतासी है ऐ शहंशाह वफा नाम ले लेंगे मेरा जब ये जालिम ने कहा नाज़ता जिस पे तुझे अब बुलाओ ना उसे और मैं रोती रही सुनाया बाजी
बीमार था, एक आबिदे बीमार था, जो बाजार था और शाम का बाजार था, और मुस्तफा की बेटियां मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। रो रो कहे कासिम की माँ, रो रो कहे कासिम की माँ, मारा गया कासिम जवां, मारा गया कासिम जवां। ऐलान में ढूंढूं कहाँ, ऐलान में ढूंढूं कहाँ, मैं भी तेरी सेहरा तेरा। मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। रो रो कहे कासिम की माँ, रो रो कहे कासिम की माँ, मारा गया कासिम जवां, मारा गया कासिम जवां। ऐलान में ढूंढूं कहाँ, ऐलान में ढूंढूं कहाँ, मैं भी तेरी सेहरा तेरा। मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, या हुसैन 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 या हुसैन। बुलंद सलावत।